Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about store layouts, merchandising, and how to sell fireworks. So if that interests you and you want to learn a little bit more on how to sell fireworks in a retail setting, stay tuned and watch along. Something that we made a big effort for this year is to actually do a lot of pre-planning. So what we did before we got our product to our tent, before we put our tent up, before we even placed our order for our 4th of July season, was we looked at the data from the previous season. And what we did was we took all of the products that we sold, and then we looked at how many of that same product do I have to repurchase in order to sell that many again next year. Because what will happen is year after year, there's going to be product that you don't sell and you store it for the next year. So knowing what your inventory is prior to repurchasing is going to be super helpful in this process. So what we did from there was we looked at each category and then eliminated SKUs that just didn't perform well. Or maybe it's a SKU that we got bad feedback on, or it's a SKU that we just personally didn't like. So it's hard to sell something you don't like. So what we did then was we took all of that and put in our order, placed our order, made sure our product was secured, we exported that and put it into Google Sheets. What we do at this point is we go through and have some fun with pricing. So it sounds really weird to price things out before we even get them in, but once you have the order secured and your order placed, the product's yours. So you know what you purchased it at, you know what margins you want to hit. So what we did was we put it into our fancy dancy fun little calculator and popped out what our retail pricing is. So a couple things that we did was we set some parameters. One, I made sure that all the pricing was what I consider pretty pricing. So that is basically saying that I'm not going to price something at $11.99. I'm going to price it at $9.99 or $13.99 or $14.99, but not $15.99 because that sounds weird. So think about what prices look good on the shelf, and then also just limit yourself. So that way it's not as overwhelming or daunting whenever you're trying to figure out how to price it. So in our pricing calculator, how it works is you enter in what you want to sell it at and what you bought it at, and then it populates what your margin is at that point. So that way you're not trying to type in $14.49. Okay, we're not there yet. $14.99. Set yourself some parameters and makes your life so much more easier. So once we did all that, we have it in a spreadsheet, and then it's when we start our layout. So this is very, very simple and very free because it's in Google Sheets. What we did was we took a sheet and we made a square box, and then I made as many cells as there are square feet in our tent. So each box represents a 1x1 square in our tent, 1x1 foot square in our tent. And then what I did was I took 6 feet out from the perimeter of the tent in, and I colored that in a blue. I call that our waterway. So that is our protection. If there is wind, it's not going to hit the product immediately. So you have about a 6-foot buffer zone. So no product is going to be in there. Then you got to know, do you have 6-foot tables or do you have 8-foot tables? From there, we made little boxes, and each box represented a 6-foot table because we have 6 feet tables. This also helped me know how many tables I had to make sure that I had in my position before my staff showed up so they can start setting them up. From there, I decided where I want my product to go category-wise. So for example, in the front when you walk into our tent, you're gonna see your ground novelties and your fountains, first thing that you see. Then as you go back to the end of the tent, you see some flying novelties, and then you see rockets and smoke and sparklers and all the fun stuff. Kind of our kids zone or novelty style fireworks. As you move more towards the back half inside of the tent, you see our bigger things. So we played around with some different pricing and different sales. So for example, we had a pick 6 mix and match on select 200 gram cakes. So we had 2 full tables just dedicated to that. We also had our regular priced 200 and 350 gram cakes. And then we had our 500 gram cake that were set as BOGO cakes. So buy one, get one free. And then we had that regular price one. So what we did here is we made sure that if it was a sale cake, it sat on a separate table than a non-sale cake. That's gonna help with that pricing because you're gonna price a BOGO cake differently than you would price a non-BOGO cake. And it might look funky if you put them next to each other. So again, I use that tip of our artillery shells are a great product that people come in just for artillery shells. So we put them in the back corner of our tent to then make sure that customers go all the way through to that area. And then again, we have our tubes and our finale cakes because they are in a similar price range to those artillery shells. So it makes sense when they're in that space of the tent, they're in that mind frame of the bigger product, more expensive product, we put that there. Lastly, we have our checkout that was at Zigzag. A big thing that we have here is we put our impulse buys there. It was anything that was under $20 a piece and something that was what we consider like a must-have or a high volume product. Lastly, once I decided where all the categories were gonna go, I went through and actually assigned every foot of table a product. So whether that product took up 3 feet of a table or half a foot of a table, I made sure to know which products go where. And in this spreadsheet, what I did was I actually put down what the product name is and what the price of that product is from my pricing sheet. That way I'm able to see if, for example, cakes. If I have a $59 multi-shot cake, what's the product that's going next to it? Is it a $39 multi-shot cake? Because that might look funky. Or is it a $54 multi-shot cake? Those prices are similar to each other, so it's easier to sell them next to each other. So, lastly, always be sure to make those kind of gaps in your tables so then people are able to flow through easily. What I did once our tent went up and our product made it to our tent, I had my staff with maps and we basically took a tape measure, which was a high schooler that was 6 foot, and we measured everything with his wingspan. So we knew his wingspan was 6 feet, use what you got. And then that's how we measured out between each table how much space we actually needed. Because nothing is worse than filling an entire table up with product and putting the pallets under it and putting product on there and then having to move it because you don't have enough space. So plan from the bottom up when you're doing your tent. Put your tables down, measure, make sure you have enough space, then put your bunting on there, then start bringing out your product. It was super helpful once we started bringing out that product because then we were able to say, okay, that cake goes on table number 1. So then the staff knew, table number 1, put it down. We took it a step further and printed out half sheets and stapled them to the front of each table. And on that half sheet, it said the table number and then which products go on that table in order left to right. So then that way, staff didn't have to ask me every single time. They could read it, place the product down, and it made our setup days go much quicker and our staff was super happy. So a couple things that we did differently this year was we made a big effort to pre-plan all of our layouts before we even got product to our tent, before our tent went up, before we even actually ordered the product, to be honest with you. So what we did was we looked at the data that we had last year. We saw, okay, these are the items that actually sold really, really well, and how many more of that item do I need to purchase in order to sell as many as I did last year? This helped us purchase as many products as we needed without overbuying. And so what we did then is we took all of those items, put them in our order, exported that order into Google Sheets, and then figured out how many SKUs we'd have of each category. Your SKU count is how many unique individual products that you have in your store. So I want you to picture in your head the last time that you were on your way to a barbecue and you were told to pick up yellow mustard. And you went to your grocery store and there were 3 generic yellow mustards, all at different price points and different ingredients and different things, different labels, and they're all on the shelf next to each other and you have no idea which one to pick. And then aside from that, you also have like 7 specialty mustards, and it kind of creates this sense of confusion in the brain. Your brain has to work harder then to decide which yellow mustard am I going to choose. It's just yellow mustard. It's going on a hot dog or a hamburger. It doesn't really matter. Think about the same thing when you look at your generic items, your generic item SKU count. So, for example, something like a budget Roman candle. How many budget Roman candles do you really need in your store? I would say 1 for sure, maybe 2 if they have a different shot count, maybe. So think about that whenever you're a customer and you're shopping and you have to decide between 2 products that are pretty much identical with similar pricing. Which product are you going to choose every single time? Probably the cheaper item. So having 2 of those, great. But if you have like 7 generic Roman candles, it becomes overwhelming for your customer. Additionally, you have to then restock all of those and figure out how many of those items do you actually need. So you might sell out of one of your Roman candles right in the beginning because you only had to buy 2 cases of them because you bought 7 others. So think about that whenever you're looking at your SKU count. We experimented with this in our test retail location, and we went from 500 SKUs in our tent, and we chopped it down to about 250. So we chopped it in half. What we found was our staff was happier because they did less restocks because they were able to put more out on the table to begin with. And also our customers were able to shop the store faster because they didn't have to sit there and decide which of these two items should I choose. Now, don't get confused. I'm not saying only buy one multi-shot cake and only buy one artillery shell. No. These are just for your generic items. Be sure to still have variety in your multi-shot items and cakes. Always make sure that you have those different effects. So some fun effects that are coming into play that we're seeing right now are the girandola effect, the color changing effect, and then of course everyone still likes the palms and the peonies. So make sure that you have a variety in the effects. But if you have two cakes that do the exact same thing, decide which packaging you like better or which price point you like better and purchase that one. One of the next biggest tips that I can give to you is be smart with the space that you have. So it's really hard to find more space, so we got to use the space that we have in the smartest way possible. So a few different ways that you can do this, and my favorite is by looking at your sales data from your previous years, if you have previous years. So using something like a point of sale system to capture that data during your season is so helpful in this process. One thing that we did in this past season, and we've actually done the past 2 seasons, is we've recorded all of our sales from our retail tent and then taken that and figured out which items are our high volume products, which items are our high revenue products, and which items are our quote must-have products. So think about your high volume products as things like your snappers. You are probably going to sell thousands of these little boxes for 50 cents every single year. Another high volume product is something like smoke balls, the cheaper, small packages of smoke balls. Another high volume product are going to be your black snakes or your poppers. And then of course you cannot have a 4th of July celebration without your 99-cent box of sparklers. So these are going to be your high volume products. They're going to be the ones that you find your staff restocking over and over again. So we'll go over some tips on how to help that in a little bit. Another one is your high revenue products. So these are going to be the products that you have a little bit higher of a margin on, or you're able to make more profit off of. So think about your multi-shot cakes. So for example, this one, Make Some Noise by Sky Bacon, or your artillery shells, like one of my favorites, the Wildcat cans by Taco. These are all things that you can pull from that point of sale report so you can actually see which items are making you the most money. Lastly, we have our must-have items. So Roman candles, gotta have them. Everybody wants them. Making sure you have those in stock. Having things like your assortments that people can come in on the 3rd and 4th of July, grab a tray assortment and go straight to checkout. It's a must-have, gotta have it. Another thing is like the big stuff. So you have to have a finale cake for the customer that comes in and wants the big finale and the big show. So yeah, must-haves are a very important thing for you to have in your store. It's gonna vary location to location and depend on your region of what your must-haves are, but you guys are all experts, so I'm sure you can figure out which must-have items are for your customers. Our next tip is to make sure that you give your products the space that they need on the shelf and take away space from the products that don't need as much space on the shelf. So when you're looking at your data and you're seeing which items make you the most money, you need to make sure that those items are, one, visible from throughout the store so people know where to go for them. So for example, if it's your artillery shells, like this guy here, we placed him in the back of our tent. The reason is because we know people are gonna walk in wanting to see the big stuff, wanting to see the artillery shells. So they're gonna travel through the tent all the way back to this guy. But as they make their customer journey throughout the tent, they're gonna stop and see other things like our smaller 200 grams, or our snappers, or our assortment bags, or our BOGO cakes. So then it makes it to where the customer is shopping your entire store to get to the product that they want. So for this product, it's a high revenue product. It's a product that's gonna make us money when we sell it. So we're gonna wanna, 1, price it properly, and 2, give it the space on the shelf that it needs. I always like to say fireworks are a luxury item because, let's be honest, they kind of are. So make sure that your products are sitting upright, your label is fully visible, and it has space on the shelf. If you see a shelf that's super crowded, and if you pull something off of it, everything else is gonna tumble down, people are gonna be scared to grab it, or they're gonna grab it and everything's gonna tumble down and it's gonna be a whole mess. So give your products the space that they need. That also goes for your smaller cakes. So for example, Cuba Libre is a high selling item for us. It's cheaper, but what we do is, since it does fit that cheaper budget cake 200 grams section, what we'll do is we'll actually put it on the corner of a table. That way, if the customer is coming from the left or the right, they're both going to see that item and plop it in their cart. Same with the Color Pearl by Sky Bacon. These are a great item to put on a corner table. It also allows you to restock more of this item quicker, because what you're able to do is plop down 2 cases worth on that table, walk away, and restock your other stuff. And you're not constantly restocking that one item. Next, we'll talk about knowing when to give that item double space or single space. So, a tool that we like to use a lot is a PDQ. These are great for your items like snappers, novelties, poppers, all of that fun stuff. So for this one, our PDQs currently are 17 inches wide. So whenever you decide that you want to use a PDQ, you plop it on your table, put all your stuff in there, and then what happens is you have to restock them. So if it's something, for example, product like Black Snakes, they're at a low price point, they're gonna go down in stock very quickly. What you can do, so you don't have to unbox these every single time, on the 4th of July, you're unboxing a lot of stuff, go ahead and unbox a second PDQ worth and place it right next to it. That way customers are never having to wait on you to restock it. The key thing in fireworks, if it's not on the table and it doesn't have a price tag, you can't sell it. So it doesn't do you any good to have that product in your back room. You want to have it out on the table to be able to sell it. To figure out which items are those high volume products that you're going to have that double space for is by looking at your sales data. And keep in mind, this may change throughout your entire season. So in the beginning of the season, something like an assortment might not sell as well as it would on the 3rd and 4th. What we did was we actually expanded and plan to expand our assortment section for just the days of the 3rd and the 4th. This allows us to move people through the store quicker because they can just pick up the item and go. Whereas earlier in the season, we find that customers like to shop around and look and see everything. So think about how you can move around your space even throughout the season to accommodate those special days. Our next big section of tips here is to leverage your own product against your own product to sell your product. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is make sure that where you put your product and how you price it makes sense to its neighbor. So for example, Angry Cowboy is a 200 gram cake. It is an awesome cake and it can retail anywhere from $15 to $20 depending on your region. I Love It Loud is an awesome 500 gram cake. But one, there are 2 different categories, and 2, they're vastly different in size. So it wouldn't make too much sense for me to put these on the shelf next to each other. So that's pretty clear cut. But now let's look at Printer Malfunction, which is also a really good 500 gram cake. Printer Malfunction is 24 shots, and I Love It Loud is 33 shots. So depending on how you price out your products, these 2 are most likely going to be different prices. Now, I don't know off the top of my head what these retail for, but let's just go off a shot count, for example, on this one. So if you have Printer Malfunction on the shelf at 24 shots next to a cake that is smaller in size and square foot wise, and it is 33 shots, for an unexperienced fireworks buyer, they're not going to know why the prices are different and why they're different sizes if this one has more shots and it's smaller and this one has less shots and it's a bigger cake. Unless you have someone on the sales floor explaining that to them, they're going to get confused and they're just going to look at the price. They're probably going to buy this one if it's cheaper with a higher shot count over this one if it's more expensive with a lower shot count. So keep in mind what items are sitting next to which items. So I like to always say, look at what the product's neighbor is going to be and see if they're going to be good neighbors, and if not, separate them. So for example, another one we have here is Make Some Noise is a great fan cake, and so is Sky Patriot, but they're vastly different in sizes. So take a look at what you're going to price these at, and then also take a look at how much space they're going to take up on the table, and then decide, does it make sense to put them next to each other or not? A couple different things that people do are, one, they price things from $0 to the left and all the way to the right, you go up in price. That's one option. Another option is, like I said, to leverage products against each other. So, for example, just throwing out random numbers here, these are not real retail numbers. I cannot stress that enough because these would be outrageous. So let's say we sell Sky Patriot for $5. Great. And we sell Make Some Noise for $10. I can guarantee you Sky Patriot is going to outsell Make Some Noise all day long if these are next to each other on a shelf, because this one has a bigger square footage on the table and it's cheaper, whereas this one has a smaller square footage on the shelf and it's more expensive. So think like a shopper would think whenever you are putting these out on the table. Again, make sure that the label of the product is facing outward. Fireworks are a luxury product, so sell them like they are. And if you have your products up on the table and they're all crooked, and maybe you just see the warning label or like the top of it, and the customer doesn't know what it is, they're not going to pick it up and really buy it if it doesn't catch their attention. Fireworks are like books. You judge them by their cover and you judge them by their label. So if it's a good label that's clear and shows what your shot count is, has your name, a fun picture, something funny, typically will get your customers to buy it. A really fun thing that we have on our products is this reference guide. This is not only good for your employees to reference it whenever a customer asks about a question. It has the category, what type of product it is, how many grams of it is in it, its shot count, what the spread is, if it shoots straight up or it's a fan cake. It also tells you what colors it is, what the volume is. So this is also really important. Some people don't want loud stuff. So it's good to know if this product is loud or if it's quiet. It's also going to tell you the duration and how high in the air it goes. And also a little blurb about what it does. So a great way to sell it to your customers. Also a great thing to educate your customers on, for them to look at the package so then they can get their questions answered for them. So in turn, make sure that your product's neighbors are friendly to each other and they help each other out. Because unless you're trying to push a product out by putting it purposely next to a more expensive product, then it's going to be very difficult to sell your products next to each other. If you are in a stand, this is a really big tip for you. So make sure that the shelving that you have in your store makes sense and the products on each shelf make sense. So for example, you're going to want to put those high margin and best-selling items at eye level for your customer. This is going to make it, one, fast for them to find, and two, easier for them to spot. So prompting them to purchase them more. Another tip, if you're in a tent or store, is to make sure the product isn't on too high of a shelf. For me, I'm 5'2", and if there's a product that I have to reach up on my tippy toes, I'm probably not going to be able to grab it, especially if it's a big heavy cake, because I'm going to be afraid of toppling everything over. So make sure that your products are able to be reached by someone, or you have an employee there at all times to be able to grab a ladder and reach up to get that item for your customer. This makes it easier for your customers to shop your items. Similar to our tip with not placing things too high, you don't want to place things too low. There's a couple reasons for this. One is if you're in an outdoor location, you don't want your item directly on the ground, because then you run into the risk of any water or natural elements getting to it. So, for example, if you're in a tent like us, we always make sure that any product that's on the ground isn't technically on the ground, it's actually on a pallet. So we have a little bit of extra space, and that saves us from any flooding or any rain that comes in. Additionally, for the comfort of your customers, they might not want to bend all the way down to grab an item. It also helps to not have little kids run around and poke holes in the top of your item. So something that is just high enough to be out of a child's reach, but also low enough to be my height to reach is a good rule of thumb. One of the more fun things that you can do in your retail space is also utilize end caps or specialty tables. So these are going to be your themed sections, is a good way of putting it. So think your gender reveal, so your pink and blue items, your wedding sparklers and wedding fireworks, those silvers and golds, maybe sprinkle in some blues and purples, really fun items for the wedding space. Or maybe it's a space that's all red, white, and blue for the 4th of July, and you want your customers to know in that space, everything you get is going to be patriotic. So utilize those special spots in your store to push those items. You can also do this with the Ignite system. If you have Ignite pre-kitted shows, this is a great place to put them so then customers know that it's something special that they're getting. Signage is also really great in these kind of areas. bonus tip for you guys for restocking. So this was something that we implemented in the tent this year, and it was to help us with restocks on the 3rd and the 4th. So like I said, those high volume items that we know we're gonna push out, especially something like these, or these guys especially. So what we did was we knew that we are gonna sell snappers, the American Best snappers, as either a pack or as a piece. So what we did was the items that we were gonna fully sell as a pack, we left on the table and we left the box taped together. The items that we knew we were gonna sell as a piece, we put on the table and we filled a PDQ like this all the way up. And actually for our snappers, each snapper we had 4 PDQs. So we had 6 to 8 PDQs at all times of just snappers on one table. And we had to restock them a bunch because they're snappers and they're low cost, and people think, 1, I have to have them, it's the 4th of July. And 2, it's a cheap product, throw it in, they don't think as much about it. But what we did to help with that restock is under the table, we had these already unboxed. So whenever you go to open this, it takes a little bit of extra time to dump and sort and figure it out and make it look pretty. So what we did was we had these guys pre-stocked with the restock. So then that way all we had to do is go under the table, pull out that full one and replace the empty one. Made the restocks go a lot quicker, and we weren't in our customers' way with trying to unbox and get rid of a bunch of cardboard. So that's a big tip to help with restocks for sure. Next tip that I have for you is to make sure that you have clear and easy to read price tags on all of your items. So this could mean you have a price tag that's taped to the table, or you could have a price tag that's taped up to a sign, and this lets customers know, 1, what product they're looking at, and 2, what you're going to charge them for it. So it is much easier for the customer to look at the price and then look at the product, then look at the product and try to guess what the price is, because that can cause some confusion. So Spirit actually provides free price tags for any of the products that you purchase from us. All you have to do is go on to our wholesale website and log in, and you can actually download the price tags for your order. It's super easy, and then you can print them at home, or you can take them to a printing shop and get those printed. And then either handwrite, or you can digitally add those prices onto the tags and then tape them up to your tables or on your shelves, and that way your customers know how much the product costs. A big tip that we have for you guys is to use that dead space at checkout to put your 1, impulse buys, and 2, your high margin items. This way you can move more of those products throughout your store. So what we found in years past, and whenever we go visit retail stores all across the country, is we see customers standing in line waiting to check out, and they have nothing to do while they're standing there. So a couple things that we did to enhance our checkout is, 1, we put a TV right at checkout to entertain customers, and during the season we had firework videos on there. We actually had a really long line on the 4th of July, so we ended up putting sports on the TV to just keep people entertained so they didn't think about how long they're staying in line. So think about having something entertaining for your customers to do. Another thing is I don't know about you guys, but whenever I go to a store like Marshall's or TJ Maxx, I love to shop the checkout and checkout in, because I know, 1, the items are going to be cheaper in price, and 2, it might be something that I had looked for and it kind of fits what I need, but I didn't find anywhere else, so I'm going to go check there also. You can actually recreate that feeling for your customers in your store. So what we did at checkout is we had a zigzag line, and we had people walk their tables, and on those tables we had PDQs filled with product. So a couple products that we had on there were things like snappers, those cheap items that are easy to grab. Things like sparklers, again, the thing that you might have forgotten to grab, but don't worry, it's at checkout, I'll grab it there. Poppers, again, an easy thing to throw in. We actually sold these by the piece and the pack at checkout, and the pack sold so well, because people didn't want to grab pieces. They just grabbed the whole pack and said, good enough. Things like smoke balls, because you have to have smoke balls for 4th of July. Roman candles did really well at checkout as well, because again, it's that item that people forgot to grab, but it's there for them to grab. Something else that we did at checkout was we put the items that we only had a few more in stock of that were under that $20 limit. So anything at checkout was under $20, but we may have only had 10 of those items left. So we put it at checkout, put a price tag on it, walked away, sold them all within the day. So it makes it a really nice way to get rid and to sell out of those items that have the low inventory, and then you can fill in that space with a new product that has higher inventory. So we threw a lot at you, but a great thing that you can do now is plan ahead and create a digital layout of your retail space. So like I said, whether this is an indoor store or a tent or even a stand, you're able to right now go on in your off season in the comfort of your own home on the couch with a laptop and actually plot out where you're going to put those products. So we have a bunch of different tips on, one, how to merchandise them and which products to put next to which products. So you're able to accumulate all of that information and put it on a spreadsheet, and then when it comes time to unload that order off that hot, stinky truck, you're able to quickly tell your staff, this goes there, and you do it once instead of reorganizing it 50 times.